Hello, Garland Nixon here with the one and only Larry C. Johnson. We got important stuff to talk about. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here. Just plugging in, plugging in my power cord. I looked that one and look, things weren't looking so good there. Right? We don't want any surprises halfway through. Larry, let's talk about Oh, wait a minute. I got to bring up Larry's website for those of you. There may be somebody in in the chat. I doubt it very seriously, but there may be somebody who's never seen Larry's website, who doesn't visit it regularly and read all of the articles. But if whoever that person is, you guys need to learn. If you want to keep up with what's going on, if you want to know what's happening out there in foreign policy and more, go to sonar21.com. That's Larry's website. Lots of great stuff there. And of course, like anything else, it needs support. So make sure you go there if you can afford it. Click on that and donate and help Larry keep his good works going. Thank you very much, Larry. And thanks for coming back.
Thank you very much. You are...
All right, let's get started. Ukraine, this is a very important article. Ukraine peace deal unravels. Let's start with that, with this. You know, there's an old Zen saying. It is, the shark and the tiger shall never battle, for they have no common ground, right?
Right.
The Trump people got to get to the point where they're saying, okay, we're making an offer. The Russians will never take this offer. Zelensky's like, no way, not taking anything. And the Europeans come out, yeah, we're that. You know, so at some point, it's like there's no common ground here. Trump's saying, I'm just going to walk away. It's kind of looking like a weak bluff, like, no, you're not. And so well, your thoughts on all of that, Larry?
Well, the number one problem is the United States and now Trump pretend that we're somehow a neutral party in this. Well, we're absolutely not. We are an antagonist. We are a contributor to the violence. We are an enabler, a facilitator. You know, take whatever adjective you like. And we ought to be on our knees every night thanking God that the Russians haven't taken offense at that. Because based upon what we have done, we have committed multiple acts of war against Russia, and they've held off punching us in the nose. You know, if this was a case of self-defense, Russia is the equivalent of someone's been walking along the street and we've been going up and finger poking them for 25 years, and then when they finally haul off and smash our face in, we start crying, "Why'd you do that?" No, that was unprovoked. Oh, absolutely not. So Trump's got to get that out of his mind. He's got to stop pretending that he's got cards to play in this. Donald Trump is playing a game of strip poker and he's butt ass naked, okay? No more clothes to take off and no more cards to win anything. Russia is in the driver's seat, number one. And they keep, yesterday, the press spokesman for Putin, Peskov, came out and said very candidly, he said, hey, look, we've got Donetsk and Novorossiya, New Russia. Well, that's a historical term that goes back to the 1700s, but it defines the territory of Donetsk, Luhansk, Dnipropetrovsk, Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Odessa. And so what he was doing was actually up in the ante yesterday. He said, yeah, before we only had those four territories, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Luhansk. Now we're adding in Dnipropetrovsk and Odessa. That's coming back to us too. And there's not a thing the West can do about it, because Russia's got the military clout, the military power, the military advantage. And, there's they've just come out with statistics last week, or not statistics. They did an exchange of bodies. The Ukrainians turned over the bodies of like 49 Russian soldiers that had been killed in action that the Ukrainians had recovered. The Russians turned over to the Ukrainians more than, see, I said it was something like 920 bodies. So it was a 20-to-1 disparity. Now, some people say, well, that doesn't prove anything. That just proves that Russia's taking more territory. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? That means there's no stalemate. We've been told all along, it's a stalemate. But it can also mean that Russia is actually killing that many more Ukrainians than they are killing Russians because of the disparity in fires of both artillery, aviation, missiles, etc. There's no reversible path here for Ukraine. And the United States, and Trump and his team, they better recognize it. And their refusal to recognize it and pretend that, I'm just trying to make a peace agreement, and they keep saying each side's going to have to give something up. No, Russia doesn't have to give up a damn thing. Why? Well, who's there? What? Trump's not going to invite them to the Easter egg roll for next year? They don't care. So it is a complete disaster.
Let me ask you this, Larry. Sometimes you get hints, because there's a lot of times there's a question: how much does Trump and his inner circle really know? How much do they really know? Do they really know the truth? Does he really think there's a stalemate? Does he really think the Russians are, running out of missiles and fighting with shovels or whatever the hell, right? Every now and then you get a hint, though. For instance, Trump said recently something to the effect of, if the Ukrainians don't take a deal soon, and I'm paraphrasing, they'll, give up a couple of regions, they'll lose all of them. They'll lose their whole country, which implies to me he kind of knows. But here's the other part I want to ask you about, since you have experience inside the blob, right? I think that some of the things Trump says, it's because of the internal inside the beltway pressures that he has on him, that he has to try to play certain games like he doesn't know stuff that he really does, these narratives. I think Trump's more, that if he could, he'd walk away. He's really hamstrung by the internal pressures in DC a lot, isn't he? And not that that's an excuse. The question is, how much? I don't know, if I was president, I might say, damn it, I'd walk away. And then as soon as I became president, the pressures are around me. Crap, I want to walk away, but how do I do that? You know what I mean? What do you think about all of that, Larry?
Yeah, well, we had real questions about who was in charge when Joe Biden was there. And I'm not sure how much Trump is in control anymore because of this whole mess that we saw over at the Pentagon with Pete Hegseth and his 3 top deputies. They basically get frog marched out of the Pentagon for, quote, allegedly leaking, yet they're not charged with leaking. There was no evidence of any investigation prior to this. Nobody's even identified what the nature of the leaks were. We've got the testimony of Dan Caldwell, one of those who was fired, who was a longtime friend and colleague of Hegseth. They had worked together on Concerned Veterans of America, and he was he served as a Marine, a U.S. Marine, and was a decorated war veteran. And he was insistent. He says, not only have I not leaked anything, I haven't even talked to anybody in the press. And yet these allegations are being made against me. And, Hegseth, to his shame, suggested that these were just disgruntled employees leaking information on him. Now, either Hegseth made that decision or somebody above Hegseth made that decision. And then you watch Trump, and he's all over the board with his words. One minute, he's sending out a tape of Jeff Sachs calling Bibi Netanyahu a deep, dark son of a bitch. Then the next moment he said, "Oh, I was on the phone with Bibi Netanyahu, and we're just like that. We're in sync. We see everything eye to eye." Now, which is it? You see eye to eye, or he's a deep, dark son of a bitch? Because you're on both sides of that. And then the same with, well, I'm upset with Zelensky, but I'm really getting upset with Putin too. Yeah, that crap doesn't work. And I'm getting really tired of Trump's act on this. It's juvenile and it's self-defeating. And it's really not becoming of somebody who wants to stand up as president to lead the United States. This is like John Belushi on a coke bender in a movie, even though he was allegedly not a huge user of cocaine. It's Trump's comments and remarks, like with Iran. On the one hand, oh yeah, we want to have a deal, and then the other, there's going to be hell to pay. So, I'm not sure who's running things. I think Trump's trying to make some decisions, but there's a lot that supposedly he wants that's just not getting done, and he's getting blocked. And we've got evidence. I saw a video come out overnight. James O'Keefe, with one of his undercover videos, had this branch chief inside the Pentagon saying, "Yeah, we're going to do everything we can to sabotage Trump." So yeah, those people are out there too. But the key ought to be, can we find a peaceful way to solve all of these issues, whether it's Ukraine or Gaza or Yemen or Iran or China, without having to run up to the precipice of war?
Well, what you see is a consistent pattern, right? Iran, well, you better do what we say or we're going to blow you away. We're going to bomb you. We're going to attack you. We're going to do everything. We're having a great discussion with Iran and we're having talks. But there could be hell to pay if they don't. But we still may use the military.
Yeah,
But we've talked to them again, right? Russia, oh boy, I'm going to solve it in 24 hours. Well, if they don't do what the hell we want, then we're going to sanction them for out of the. But it's in talking to them, they've been then China. We'll fix them. We'll tear them apart with sanctions and tariffs and everything. Well, I talked to Xi Jinping and things are going good. But and it's like, are you taking people on an emotional roller coaster? What happens is this. After a while, it's like the guy that keeps faking like he's going to punch somebody. He's going, jumping at you like that. Yeah. At first, the person will jump. Hey, man, what are you doing? And after a while, they'll be like, dude, you ain't punching nobody. Come on, move on. And that's kind of like he's doing it with everybody. I'll do this. I'll get you. We're friends. I'll get you. We're friends. And I'm like, it's just start. I'll go back to back in the 80s when we were young, the kind of terms they call somebody, dude, you're spastic. You're a spaz. He's coming across as spastic.
Yeah. Well, that jumping forward movement, there comes a time you keep doing that, you get punched in the face yourself. You get your nose flattened or your jaw broken. And it's really tiresome. I mean, it's more than tiresome. It's counterproductive and it's dangerous, because look at the mess Trump has got now with China. And it looks like they really believed they could put these sanctions on China, humiliate the Chinese, and that Xi Jinping would come crawling like some dog begging Master Trump for some relief. And the Chinese are saying, not just no, but hell no. I mean, they are defiant. Then they're taking the attitude, we don't care if we suffer. We're not going to drink from your cup. We may be dying of thirst, but we ain't drinking your water. And Pepe Escobar has just spent a week over in Shanghai, and now he's in Hong Kong. But his report was, hey, this has united the Chinese like nothing he's seen, and they view it as a direct attack upon China. And again, it's once Trump overestimating the cards he thought he could play, and the Chinese hold more cards. So it's like, if you just don't walk into an unknown bar and pick a fight. You want to make sure that the bar owner and the family members of the bar owner are your friends before you start that fight. because otherwise you could get yourself in a world of trouble, which
Well,
is what Trump is doing.
yeah, here's the other part about China. I've thought about this. The U.S. has been putting missiles around China, missiles in Japan, missiles everywhere, talking, literally saying we're going to go to war with China by 2027, all this
Right.
kind of stuff. So if you're China, you're like, man, these guys they're prepping to, attack me. Okay. If I'm China, I've been looking for a way to weaken you. I've been like, how can I they want to attack me? I need to weaken them any way I can, right? I need to
Right.
make it harder for them to attack me. So you do that, and China says, look, we're cutting all of these rare earth minerals that you need for your military industrial complex, right? Oh crap. Okay, we'll make a deal. What happens if China says, oh yeah, but you ain't getting them. We're not going back to that. You're not getting them. China says, you know what? We're not buying beef from you anymore. We're not buying soybeans. These are farmers, hardworking farmers. And all of these darn farmers, the people that make this country, make the world go round, right? These farmers are saying, hey, we're losing our beef and cattle and soybeans. Okay, what happens if the U.S. says, okay, we're going to make a deal, even if they come and bend the knee and say, you know what, we were wrong. Sorry about that. We're dropping all the sanctions. China says, good, we'll go back to everything. Oh, by the way, we found other sellers. So we're not, the sanctions will go, we got a great sanctions deal, but those things that we used to buy from you, since we've found other people to sell them, we're just going to stick with them. We're not going with Boeing planes anymore. We're building our own. We're buying them elsewhere. If China says, look, notwithstanding our deal on the sanctions, the decisions that we've made to stop selling you things and stop buying from you are going to hold. If I'm China, I'm thinking, you're the one telling me you got to attack me by 2027 or 2029 or something. I ain't doing you no favors. And if I'm China, I'm just saying that's the danger that he's set up.
Yeah. It's like it's that classic story by a Russian poet where early on he saw that this one young lady was attracted to him, and he rebuffed her because he thought, you're sort of lower class, you're not my type. And years pass, and he comes back to the city of St. Petersburg, and he sees this incredibly gorgeous woman, and she's cultured and she's refined, and all of a sudden he's enamored of her. Well, it's the same girl that he had rejected years ago, only now she's married to somebody else. And she basically says, go pound sand. You had your chance. That's exactly what's taking place right now with China. Because you had it exactly right. Those soybean farmers, those cattle farmers, I bet you they voted for Donald Trump. And man, he just bent them over the log like Ned Beatty in the movie Deliverance. And they're squealing. And you're right. When, China's not going to go, oh, okay, you apologize. Let's get back together. Anybody that's been through a bad breakup, no matter if the offending party comes crawling back and begging and say, okay, hey, I'd like to make up. I'm sorry I beat you up. I'm sorry I tore up all your clothes. Give me another chance. I'm a good guy. The United States is acquiring a reputation of being, those folks are crazy. You can't trust them. They're unreliable. They're all over the board. I'm sitting on sort of pins and needles again this weekend, waiting to see what happens in Oman when Steve Witkoff sits down with the Iranians to talk about is there a deal we can get to where they're going to come out and claim, oh, Iran's not building a nuke. Well, Iran hasn't been building a nuke, but we got to now reinvent it and pretend that they were, so that we can Trump can pretend that, I stopped them. Whereas if he just stuck with the JCPOA back in 2018, it would have stopped them then too. But didn't do that. So our reliability as an international power is in real question these days.
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head with the term reliability. I've heard Sergei Lavrov use the term when he talks about international relations. People, what are you looking for? And he always says the same thing: stability. That what most countries want is they want stability. That was what I just said about the beef or whatever. Look, you got 1.5 billion people that's got to eat, right? You got to make kung pao beef, delicious stuff, but you need beef. You need a stable supply of beef. So now you need soybeans. Oh man, do lots of stuff you make with everything's got soybeans in it these days. You need a stable, it's just like your supply chain of whatever it is, aluminum, you name it, right? If you're running a country with 1.5 billion people, those people expect stability. You got certain things they want to be able to go to the store and I got to get this. I got a factory, I got to get this. These are the things they need. To me, once you do what Trump did and you say, okay, we're going to, block you from it, we're going to not sell you anything, you can't get that stability back. So now, if I've got 1.5 billion people and I'm in charge of this country, I say to other countries, I want somebody that can give me a stable supply of beef. Even if the leaders of this country disagree, if we get mad, we hate each other's guts. If I drop dead and you get a new leader and you don't like him, you can sell us 1 million pounds of beef a month and we'll pay you whatever market price is that we agree on. That's all I want. Notwithstanding the discussion about the U.S. trying to go to war with China or not, the stability of your supply chains for food. If I'm China, I got to stay with the new people and say, well, you know what I mean? That's the other point. Nobody looks at U.S. and says stability. Nobody's buying our T-bills. Oh boy, that's a nice stable investment there. We have lost. We were coming across as an unstable country in the eyes of the world, economically, militarily, diplomatically unstable.
Yeah, not only unstable, but a little bit crazy, and in a violent way. You know what? We really are that that abusive boyfriend or abusive girlfriend who's always bringing out the baseball bat, the knife, the gun, and creating some mayhem and some danger. It was like listening the other day. This spokeswoman for the Israeli Foreign Ministry was talking about how bad Iran's a threat. They're attacking all these countries in the Middle East. I'm going, lady, look in the damn mirror. You guys are the ones that are bombing in Beirut. You're the ones that are bombing southern Lebanon. You're the ones bombing in Syria throughout. You're the ones that are attacking the Houthis, blowing up their port. Don't give me this thing that you're the innocent victim. And here's the United States. We got a bigger, bloodier, longer track record than Israel in this regard. And so, I firsthand, I came across a woman in Panama. This is like 25 years ago. And I was doing investigations on product counterfeiting. And we were looking at this one little port. It's up in Cologne, the northern part. It's called Coco Solo, the lone coconut. And it's where all these boats, they're called costales, coastal boats. They sail close to the coast, but they're loaded up with all this counterfeit and gray black market merchandise shipped to Colombia, and then they wind up in these black market, gray market zones inside the country that are called San Andresitos. So anyway, one of the women working at this port, we got in a conversation, and she started describing to me the death of her 2 children that were killed by U.S. soldiers when we attacked Panama back in 1989. Now, this was 11 years after that. Needless to say, she was still suffering from that, and she didn't express hatred towards me, but not a lot of love towards America. And that's just that one case of that one woman, man. I'll multiply that by millions, by the Vietnamese, by Cambodians, by Libyans, by Syrians, by Iraqis, by Somalis, by Afghanis, by Serbians. The list goes on. And we keep going out. We are a threat, and we actually think we're the good guy. Hey, we're doing this to uphold democracy, sort of. And then here we go again, threatening. Well, we're gonna destroy Iran. We're gonna decapitate Iran. I mean, it's like, listen to yourselves, Americans. Listen to yourselves. This shouldn't be us. We are talking like a psychopathic Charles Manson type murderer. and it's just that lack of control. So I think it's more than not a lack of reliability. I mean, it is, we're just, I think the accurate scientific term is batshit crazy.
Yeah, I think you're right. Definitely right on that. I mean, just the idea. Well, let's see. And I always put it to you like this. Right now, let's face it. When it comes down to it, there's three great powers. There's three world powers. Everybody else is secondary. The U.S., Russia, and China. They are the world powers right now. There are a lot of regional powers that are powerful that can affect a lot of stuff, but those are the three head honchos. The United States is on the border of Russia in Ukraine, pumping missiles in the air, starting war with Russia. The United States is pumping weapons into Taiwan, into Philippines, into South Korea, saying, oh boy, we're going to set them up to attack China. There's three world powers, and one of them is pumping weapons to the border of the other two, literally threatening them and telling them, you've got to do what we live like. And they're looking at us, they're saying, your economy's collapsing. You got two parties that don't make sense at all. You ride from city to city. If you go to an empire, the cities are the jewels of the empire. The great Rome and the Colosseum and, the great cities of the empires. Our cities are crap, every one of them, not just New York or San Francisco. You can go to, Iowa. Our cities all over the country are just crumbling down to nothing. The country's falling apart. But we're telling everybody, you got to be like us. It's you got to do things the way. And they're like, people, the Russia and China's like, you got to be kidding me. Your place is falling apart. And your governments hate you. And our people kind of like our leaders. It's insanity.
Do you remember the actor John Goodman when he was real fat?
Yep.
So that'd be like John Goodman being a health fitness expert back in his chubby days. You're going to give you advice on how to be fit. And probably the lesson you take is, let me watch everything you do. I'll do the exact opposite. Okay. So that's what we keep hyping. We've got this gimmick. So we keep threatening to attack China. By God, we're going to be at war with China. We keep threatening to attack them. And so they start building up their military because we're threatening to attack them. And then as they build their military up, we go, see, they're a threat. That's like me threatening to, shoot your house up. And then you go buy a gun to protect yourself. And I say, see, he's being aggressive. So, at some point, we need to just stop this, heaping the male bovine excrement on ourselves and convincing ourselves that, that is chocolate mousse, chocolate pudding, instead of the offal of a bovine creature. And for the life of me, I look at the current world situation, and let's take Iran as the number one opportunity right now. Iran is willing to cap its nuclear enrichment program. They've upped it now to 60%, and they can jump it up to 90%. That's where you start producing enough uranium material that can be used to build an actual nuclear weapon. But I think they'll even take a deal at like 3.6, 3.7%, provided that Russia will provide the 20% enriched uranium. It's called HALEU, and it are highly enriched uranium, and that's used for medical isotopes, medical research. So they'll take that deal because they're not building a nuke right now, and guarantee we'll give that up, and you lift some economic sanctions, and you won't have to worry about that anymore. But is the United States willing to take that deal? Well, Trump has been all over the map there. On the 1 minute, he said, no. You got to destroy every single missile that you got in your military, every single missile. And on top of that, you can't talk to Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis anymore. Well, that'll be a deal killer. And Iran said, well, no. So, will Trump, if Trump's real goal is to eliminate the threat of Iran using a nuclear weapon, will he take that deal? Or will he put all these extraneous things on it that is really, that's the real approach? What we want is regime change. And we're just trying to buy some time. We're using the nuclear weapon as a gimmick. That's all it is. It's just a gimmick. It's not the real deal.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the other part of it is you've got the Russians and the Chinese saying, "Look, we're there. You want to get a deal with Russia?" With them, the Russians are saying, "Look, well, we're close. We got all kinds of connections and alliances with them. You want to deal with them? Sit down. We'll all talk. We'll do guarantees of it. We'll handle their nuclear stuff. It's if you wanted to deal right now, it would be the easiest time. The Iranians are saying, we'll do a deal with you regarding our nuclear stuff, if that's what you
Right.
want. Not the other stuff, but if that's what you want, we'll do. The Russians are saying we will facilitate the deal. So I think what we're looking to find out now is whether or not that's it. When many of us believe, we know what Israel wants. They want a war. They want a war and destruction of Iran, and Iran to get blasted to pieces. And they don't care win, lose, or draw. They want what the Europeans want. The Europeans want the United States to go to Ukraine and go to war. The Europeans know they don't have any military option.
Yeah.
They know they got nothing. So what they're saying is, let's keep this going in some kind of way. We can draw the United States in, and they'll fight Russia and get blasted to hell. But who cares? Meanwhile, the Israelis are over there saying, "Hey, let's keep this thing going, and we'll start something up with Iran, and we'll get the U.S. drag them over here, and then they'll go to war with Iran." So we got the same. Really dynamic is a bunch of lunatics in two different parts of the world that want to drag us in there because we started a lot of that crap, and for us to fight the war and us to get the hell knocked out of us and maybe get nuked and everything else. So everybody's trying to drag us into war, and we won't say to them, "Nah, you can't, no, because we got lunatics in our country that are for fighting both of them."
Well, and look how well we're doing with the Houthis. So during the first, it started in December of 2023. So by the end of December 2024, that's 13 months. Then January, February, 15 months. During that 15-month period, the Houthis on average shot down one U.S. Predator drone, the Reaper, the MQ-9. They shot down one a month. And each time they shoot one down, the price on it is estimated between $30 and $40 million. Since March 15th, so now we're talking 5 weeks, going on 6 weeks, the Houthis have shot down 7. They're shooting down almost a little more than one a week. So that, again, that's either 210 million or 210 million or $280 million in just 5 weeks. And then when you add that to the previous amount, we're closing in on $1 billion worth of Predator drones. Now, why do you think they're shooting down so many? Well, because the United States is trying to step up its military operations. The only way you can really destroy the mobile launchers that the Houthis have and that are using to fire at both Israel and at our ships is with a Predator drone, because it gives you real-time information. You can see it, and then you can quickly give commands for it to launch missiles on a target below. But the Houthis have also figured this out, and it appears that they're finding ways to bait us into, they can paint a coconut log up to look like a missile launcher of some sort. And so despite we've run over 600 sorties, bombing sorties in Yemen since March 15th, and the Houthis haven't run up the right flag. So that's why I say this notion that, oh yeah, we can just magically go in and we're going to bomb the stuffing out of Iran, and man, they'll give up. They'll be crying, saying, "Oh, we surrender." We can't do it to the Houthis, and Iran's actually got a much more robust military capability. They've got an over-the-horizon radar that reaches into Israel. They've got air defense systems that can engage planes outside of their national boundaries. And yeah, we got some big ass buster bump and bunker bombs, but the planes actually have to be able to fly somewhat over them to drop them. And if we put any B-52s in the air over Iran, they're going to get shot down. So we got to stop pretending that we're Superman. We're I've likened it. I think we talked about this last week when you're a kid, you're 8 years old, you're watching Superman. You say, man, I'm going to tie that towel or bed sheet on my neck and I'm going to jump off the building and be able to fly. Fortunately, I only tried that off of an 8-foot shed, okay? Because gravity caught up with me real quick. Well, that's exactly what's going to happen to the United States. If they're foolish enough, stupid enough to decide, yeah, we're going to go along with Israel and we're going to attack Iran. You cue up the Jim Croce song. You don't tug on Superman's cape or spit in the wind. And you certainly don't go bombing Iran when you can't even lick the Houthis.
Yeah, I think you're right. It would be, I would imagine there are people in Trump's inner circle telling him that, even though there's people that are saying other things. I imagine there's people close enough saying, dude, if you do this, it could go really, really bad. Let me ask you this about what are your thoughts about the position that people say the Europeans, and I don't say the Europeans, there's a very small faction of the European elite, ruling elite, who are like, oh, we're all with Zelensky, we're riding with Zelensky all the way, and we're going to do, it's us and Zelensky against the Americans, right?
Yeah.
Now, yeah. I watched a video from a guy in London the other day, and he was just a regular guy saying, if these people think we're going to go to war and fight for them in Russia, if Starmer think, no, he won't, we'll turn around and we'll come to London and we'll, and I'm thinking, dude, if you try to draft a bunch of people in the UK, as bad as their economy is, and say you're going to go die in Ukraine, they'll overthrow this country and burn your city to the ground. I mean, the young Brits are saying that stuff,
Yeah.
So we got people like Macron and Starmer and these people who have like 14% approval rating saying, I'll take my country into Ukraine to fight. We're standing with Ukraine no matter what. And they can't even hold on to power themselves, barely. I mean, they got to cheat to hold on to power. So it's weird. How long can they keep this charade up? Because if there was a vote, most of them would be gone next week if there was an honest vote.
Yeah, well, they keep pushing the envelope, and they keep spending the money they don't have. And, when the economic collapse comes, and it's coming, there's no way they can avoid it. They're making all the wrong choices. Then the chaos will be unleashed. I think England and France in particular are in particular jeopardy, as is Germany. So there's no economic strength among any of them, and the political divisions are deep, and the societies are fractured. There's no consensus at all. I think the precipitating, the split up will be over the economy, and that we're right now dancing on the edge of the knife anyway, as it is.
What are your thoughts on the tariffs, the whole tariff thing? I've heard. I'll give you one thing I've heard. I heard one person say an interesting. They said, "Well, with Trump, it was they did it. This whole tariff thing. It was because the question is, was it all about getting China, or was this all the rest of it a head fake so they could really go after China?" That's one school of thought. Another guy said, "Look, and there are people that think this. They did it, and while there were errors in it, the neocons then grabbed the ones for China and said, okay, let's triple, double, and quadruple down on this, so that the neocons grabbed the stuff to go after China and said, let's use that and push it to try to go after China." Well, needless to say, it's all crumbling on them. But anyway, what are your thoughts about this whole? Are they really true believers? Did they really think this crap would work? And where are we now? Your thoughts on the tariffs?
Yes. Well, let's answer the last first. As far as, yeah, there are true believers. Peter Navarro, some other, I'll call them economic midgets, that um, genuinely believed that by imposing tariffs, it would force China to its knees, force China to surrender, have to deal with us and negotiate. You know, people just didn't sit down and think this through. Because let's start with ask the simple question: what products, goods, or services do we produce that China cannot live without? Uh, maybe some lithograph machines that are used to produce for printing chips, computer chips, but that's about it. Um, Turn the question around. What is it that China produces that we can't live without? Oh boy, there we get a long list of rare earth minerals that are critical for the production of batteries, electronic items, and military equipment and weapons in particular that we can't live without. The computers and cell phones that are produced in China, batteries that are produced in China, things that we don't have an alternative source to go to. Whereas, as you mentioned earlier, like China imports a bunch of soybeans. Well, they started moving away from us 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when Trump's first tariffs went to Brazil. Brazil's more than happy to send them. Hey, guess who else grows soybeans? Russia. Russia's happy to sell them, and Canada. So all of a sudden, the United States is, we've imposed tariffs without thinking it through. That it's one thing if I've got the rare earth mineral that you need, that you gotta have, then you're going to pay what you need to pay to get it. But, you won't be happy about it, but you can't live without it. Well, that's exactly the situation where the United States is now, and the evidence that's starting to leak out is that Trump's looking to back down. We're going to ease off. And then, oh no, we're not. We're going to. Oh, please, you are, because the ships are lining up offshore. They're not coming on shore anymore with goods, and it's hurting a lot of average people. And I witnessed this the other day. I was on this group discussion. One of the people on the group who lives in Puerto Rico had just ordered a container. He had to pay like $120,000 for the container out of China. And he just got notified he was going to have to pay a bill in addition of $150,000 just to get the goods off. And there was another person on that call who said, "Oh, well, you just don't understand. This is not a tax." And he goes, he says, "Bull, it absolutely is a tax. I've got to come up with this cash." This will go down in the history books as one of the stupidest things that Donald Trump ever did. This is a total self-inflicted wound, because he got all this fixation. You're well read. You've read a lot of history. I'm pretty well read. I don't ever recall reading anything about McKinley, President McKinley, and his great economic programs. He was sort of an afterthought. He was not. You weren't thinking, man, God, why didn't they put McKinley's face on Mount Rushmore? None of that.
And our economy was totally different then.
Yeah.
You can't say, you know what? Back when they had wooden ships, they used to use this particular military tactic when they were fighting the Spanish Armada. Therefore, I'm going to take this Arleigh Burke destroyer and utilize the thing. No, they were taking like 5 knots in the wind back then.
Yeah.
We're going to fire cannonballs. We're going to go to cannonballs for all our ships because, hell, they worked for the British back when they're like, no, and that's this concept that I can go back to a time when things were completely different and use similar tactics that, quite frankly, didn't work then, but I think they worked. And I can apply them now without taking everything else back into context. It's a dream world like kind of thing.
Well, the nice thing about this whole tariff fiasco, uh, it really forces a reassessment, rethinking of the traditional free market capitalism assumptions about trade. That we what kids are taught, particularly in U.S. universities, on the introduction to economics. It's basically this notion that, oh yeah, free unfettered trade. That's what everybody will. It'll rise. It'll everybody will essentially enter into agreements that'll be mutually beneficial, and the world will be great. And now we're finding out, well, boy, that's not how the world works at all. And the Chinese are, they're now just a convenient scapegoat for us. Because our fundamental problem is this: we got trillions of dollars in debt. Well, how the hell did we get there? Oh, yeah, that's right. We thought it was a good idea to start a war in Panama and a war in Somalia and 2 wars in Iraq and a war in Afghanistan and a war in Syria and a war in, maybe we ought to step back and stop spending on the war machine. That might bring an end to some of our fiscal woes. But when you suggest that, you're automatically being un-American.
Well, Larry, it brings me back to this. Every 6 to 8 months or so, or every so often, we'd hear Congress needs to raise the debt ceiling. And then there was a debt ceiling argument over why or when, and it was bullcrap. You knew they were going to raise the debt ceiling.
Right.
And nobody talked about what that meant or what the debt ceiling was. We got to raise the debt ceiling so we can do this or do that or afford this or buy this, right? Like, that's like every time I turn around, hey, I want something to do. What do you do? Go to, I got good credit. Give me another credit card. Give me another credit card. Give me another credit card. And I just keep getting in. Next thing you know, I got a stack of credit cards that looks like a 52 card deck of cards. And I'm just getting, at some point, I'm now using credit cards to pay off credit cards.
Yeah.
And now that thing is spun out of control. And it almost appears to me the things we're doing, they're driving up the interest rates. We owe so much that we are rapidly approaching the point where we're going to have to borrow to pay. And at that point, when you get to that point, the rest of the world looks at you and says, I ain't buying T-bills. I'll put it like this. If I get to a point where I got to get credit cards, I got to go out and apply for another credit card. What are you going to use that for? To pay another credit card? Nobody's going to give me a credit card anymore, are they? Because they're going to know, hell, this is what do they call it? A Ponzi scheme, right? We're getting to the point. When we get to that point, people ain't going to buy treasury bills. They ain't going to invest a dime in the United States. We're just going to be sitting there reaching, trying to sell, trying to get more credit to pay off the old credit. And you're not going to be able to do it. And the whole Ponzi scheme falls apart. And I think we are like on the verge of that. And might I add this? And Trump comes in acknowledging that, saying, okay, that's where we are. I understand. We got to do this. Oh, we're going to fire employees. We're going to do this, all these things. And then he increases the bill by the Pentagon spending by $130 billion. Yay, we're up to $1 trillion now. And I'm like, you idiot. You said you knew that was the problem. And now you're bragging that you're going to double down on stupid.
Yeah. No, it is. I guess you can ascribe it to economic illiteracy. But Trump's refusal to grapple with the fact that nothing, I've heard so many people say that, oh, America, the world cannot live without the US dollar. The United States is too strong. We can't fall. And all I'm thinking is, you know what? I bet you there were some Romans sitting around in Rome at one point said, man, this world, man, they can't live without us. We are going to be here forever. And that civilization crumbled. The Greeks, same thing. The Babylonians and the Persian Empire, same thing. The Egyptian pharaohs, same thing. So my reading of history is we're a sure bet to fail, not a sure bet to win. And particularly when we're making choices like we're making, that instead of saying, let's figure out if we can actually live together with other countries without threatening them. That, we used to enjoy the benefit of the reserve currency because everybody wanted to use the dollar. But man, the moment you start using that dollar to threaten you and to sanction you, you do this or else. People say, I can't afford to be dependent upon that anymore. I've got to go find another way. It's like I told the story before of I was still 18 living at home, and my dad and I had a disagreement over the length of my hair. Believe it or not, my hair was shorter then than it is now. And he said, you get a cut or you get out. I got out. He was shocked. My mother cried for a month. But I'm glad I did it. I look back with no regrets, because there's something that comes from breaking away from a dependent relationship where you set yourself up and say, I'm going to be independent. I'm not going to be reliant upon these clowns anymore. And that's what the United States is trying to foster, a codependent relationship. We want people dependent upon us, so that we can tell them what to do and when to do it and how to do it. And if they don't do it, we can punish them. And the rest of the world's waking up. China and Russia have awakened to that, and they go, wait a damn minute, man, this is not going to continue. And I can't tell you the number of senior American pundits, so-called smart people in foreign policy. They really believe that Russia doesn't want to be under the thumb of China. And so we got to feel out how to peel off Russia from China so that we can attack and weaken China. And then we'll take care. Once we get China out of the way, then we'll go have our way with Russia. And then they think that the Russian and Chinese are too stupid to realize that. No. They've caught on. So they go, no, we're not playing that game anymore with America. The day of you being the colonial master, that's over. We ain't your slaves.
Yeah, definitely. I'm with you on that. I think that's where those countries are. And the other part of it is this: what when and I hear this a lot in the rhetoric of our so-called leaders, right? Okay, if you got a football team and you lose all your games, right? You can blame it on the refs. I've been cheating, but they cheated just 16 games in a row and you lost all. You can blame the other team. They're doing things. Okay. But at some point, don't you want to? Maybe we need a new quarterback. We need new coaches. We need a new general manager. We must improve. Maybe our guys need to work hard. We need to do some things to improve our club.
Right.
What I don't hear from the U.S. is, look, if you look at some of these schools, they were built in the 1940s and 50s, and they're like the windows are falling out of them, right? We need to do something about our education system. We need to look at our education system and make sure that we have the highest tech education, that when the kids go to the school, all of the satellite stuff, like, you go in China and they got like satellite screens and things in the schools that the kids are learning from, computerized. The kids are learning in the school how to do computerized stuff. And we don't even barely have computers or a desk, right? That you say, we got to revamp our system so that we can put out the top schools. We need to do something about, heck, if we built factories, our electronical grid couldn't supply them with enough electricity because they did everything and go down. That we won't do is look internally and say, we got to spend some money fixing our team so we're a better team, so we're better able to compete. We got to go out and give you the Tanya Harding treatment and bop you in the knees with a lead pipe instead of trying to improve. Yeah. That's the way it comes across. Like a recognition, mistakes have been made here and we need to improve. Instead, it's like, no, we don't have to do anything different. Well, why would the country that's crumbling, and you've been to Moscow, they're building all kinds of new stuff and there's cranes everywhere and there's beautiful, they're building subways. We're not doing that anywhere. Why would they be like us? And we just can't seem to get that we need to be improve it all across.
Well, it's you and I have lived in the same area up in the Washington, D.C. area. Did you ever go to either a Baltimore Orioles game or a Colts football game back in the day when they played at Memorial Stadium? Now,
yep.
So I'm there in the early 1980s. So this is about 35 years after that stadium was built, and it was sort of decrepit. It was not well designed. People, you'd sit in certain locations, you're having to look around steel beams. The upper deck at Memorial Stadium was such that you felt like you needed to be a mountain climber with some rappelling gear. I mean, the damn steps were so steep, you felt you're going to fall down a mountain. And then I was born and raised in the Kansas City, Missouri area in Independence. The Royals and the Chiefs built stadiums side by side back in 1972, 50 years ago. Those stadiums are still standing. They are modern. I mean, you wouldn't know that they were built 50 years ago. Whereas that Memorial Stadium, yeah, you thought it was built in the 30s. And it's that lack of vision where, what we've seen right now is the United States has been slow on the uptick to start rebuilding our infrastructure, in part because, man, we're spending trillions in Afghanistan and Iraq, and it's going overseas. It's not staying here at home. And then when you look up and go, God, how did we get in debt? We got to take that military credit card out of our hands.
One last thing I'll ask you before we go about Israel, and that is, this liberal intervention crap. We're going around the world overthrowing countries, interfering with people's stuff because we're the good guys for good and moral reasons. We got to stand up against dictators. We always got some story of morality while we're, doing some evil deed. I think that's dead. I think the reality is people are looking at Israel saying, don't even ever try it again. That the United States can never go make some immoral argument that even though, let's face it, they were fake. But I think people are looking at what's happening with Israel right now, that, they're just bombing and slaughtering civilians like they're nothing. They seem to have lost their freaking minds. If you look at Smotrich and these crazy fascist people, we're attacking the Houthis to stop them, because they're really defending against the genocide. That morally, the United States now, the world looks at us and says, you people are insane. You're immoral. And we just look like, well, I was going to say we look like vicious lunatics, because that's what vicious lunatics should look like. Your thoughts on that moral concept that I don't think we can get back?
Well, what I find truly disgusting is how Israel tries to play the Holocaust card on this, where they go, this is the worst, October 7th, the worst slaughter since the Holocaust. You go, okay, wait a second. Now, if I understand your story correctly, in the Holocaust, you lost 6 million. On October 7th, there were 1,575 killed. And of that number, about 300-400 were killed by the Israeli military. So let's call it 800-900 died. You're saying that's as bad, almost, as the mass extermination of Jewish communities throughout Europe and in Eastern Europe? Guys, stop. That kind of dishonesty, where you're trying to play a card for sympathy, and in the process, you end up, they end up behaving like the very thing that they claimed that they were trying to fight against back in 1945. The number of dead children that are showing up on video is just, it's sickening. There's a young lady out of, she actually lives in Australia. Her handle is Syrian Girl.
Yeah, I know her.
Yeah.
Maram.
Yeah. So she's a friend, and she put up on Twitter X the other day just a series of these horrific movies, images of all these dead children. And where's the outrage? Where is the outrage? And it's like, well, it's okay to kill Palestinian children because they're not real human beings. It's only the Israeli children who actually weren't killed. The lie about the 40 beheaded babies, that was just a completely made up. It wasn't true. But yet that becomes a justification for carrying out acts of genocide against the Palestinian people. So our moral compass is broken. It's not just not zeroed correctly. It's broken.
Yeah, I would say it's exposed, the same way so many people, I know I've said, but one last thing I'll comment on. I've been I'm a First Amendment person. I believe in the Constitution. And I always say this: how do I judge whether or not you believe in the First Amendment? Whether you support it when people say you don't, some things that you don't agree with.
Right,
When
exactly right.
people say I always go back to the ACLU, Skokie, Illinois,
Right.
right? And I
Yeah.
go back to when I was with the ACLU and the KKK was trying to get a permit to march, and we defended them, said you got to give them a permit. Why? Because that's what the First Amendment says, unpopular views. How do you feel when unpopular speech that you totally disagree with it? You got to defend that and say they got a right to say it. You can go over there. You have your own protest against them
Right.
if you don't like them. You got a right to do that, right? We got all of these people. Well, during COVID, oh, we're being censored. I don't like that. Ukraine, oh, we're being censored. I don't like that. But now that it's Israel, they could say, oh, no, we got to censor these people, throw them out of the country, throw them, take the money from the colleges who have done a complete 180. And I'm like, look, I may not agree with you on Israel, but here's what we should agree. You don't like what they're saying, which means you especially have to defend what they're saying. You can only be judged as believing in the First Amendment when you defend speech that you don't agree with, and they have failed that with an F of the highest order.
Yeah, well, it's happened on both sides. We recall that when speakers like Laura Ingraham or Charlie Kirk would show up at some university, and the protests would be
Yep.
they're outraged, not let them speak. So you would think then, and that happened to Donald Trump. So you would think that Trump, being sensitive to that when he comes into office, is now in a power, is doing the exact same thing in the name of fighting anti-Semitism. When what people are protesting, including lots of Jewish students protesting the genocidal policies of these crazed Zionists that are killing Palestinians, and then to crack down on their rights of free speech, and so it really is troubling that the extremes on either side fall into the same trap, and it's I wish we had more people sort of the tradition of John Adams, because Adams, at least when the British soldiers who were accused of the Boston Massacre, that he stood up for them and defended them, and ultimately they were exonerated. But this, that's not how the game is played in Washington anymore. It's always one side bullying and beating up the other.
Yeah, I'm all for rights as long as it's my side. And soon as the other team, I feel like they're doing something, then I'll become them. It's like, it's like the person who's being held prisoner in and they're getting beaten by the guards. Some people want to escape. What would you do if you suddenly became the guard and that guard became the prisoner? Would you beat them the same, or would you say, when I was a prisoner,
Yeah.
you used to beat me every
Yeah.
day? I'm not going to do that. Well, we're seeing that people are just failing. It's Larry Johnson. Let's not forget, this is important. Everybody's got to see before we go. I hope everyone sees. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Yeah, there we go. Everybody's got to see sonar21.com. Very important. This is Larry's website. And it's sonar21.com. You can see that. Lots of great articles there. You can, all the latest articles, just click on there. There's Larry's stuff. He's got guest contributors. Certainly, you got to click on support us. It's very important. Don't forget that people who are doing this important work, need to be supported so that we can keep it going. It isn't free. Larry's paying for that website. He's using all of his own time to make it happen. So please support Larry. If you can afford to, click on that and see any way you can. Thanks a lot, Larry, and I look forward to having you again sometime soon. It's great.
All right, Brother Nixon, I do appreciate the invite, and you're a tremendous host. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks a lot, everybody. Don't forget, most importantly, if you can afford to buy me a coffee or Patreon or any of that stuff, that's great. If you can't, don't worry about it. Just the important thing, everybody in the chat right now, there's 817 people. That means 817 people should share this on all their social media platforms. Thanks a lot.